Leichhardt Town Hall is the venue for the forum where candidates vying for the Inner West State electorate of Balmain will forward their case as to why they deserve the vote from the local residents in the upcoming state election. Hello and welcome to this forum where two of the candidates will each make representations to the electorate. For the Greens local councillor and relative newcomer to politics, Kobi Shetty. She's well known to the residents. Her selection by the Greens comes after the current sitting member, Jamie Parker, announced his retirement. Deputy Mayor of Inner West Council Labor candidate Philippa Scott thinks she has a real shot of winning this seat back from the Greens. And if there is any sentiment across the state towards the Labor Party at this election, a win by that party could carry the Labor candidate across the line here in the seat of Balmain, despite the significant margin held by the Greens at the last election. The rank outsider for the race, Freya Leach, for the Liberals, is unavailable to attend tonight, but it's worth noting that given the candidates in this seat, what is assured is that irrespective of the election result, the seat will be represented by a woman for the first time since 2011. The forum tonight is just that. It's not a debate. Each candidate will present their position and party policies, followed by a Q&A session moderated by local artist Merilyn Fairskye. Rather appropriate really, considering the inner west of Sydney is home to more artists per capita than any other local government area.
So, just to get started, I would like to invite our first speaker, who is Kobi Shetty, who's the Greens candidate for this electorate.
Hi everyone, just want to check that you can hear me okay. I know the audio here is a bit iffy. I'd also like to start by acknowledging that we are meeting here today on the land of the Gadigal and Wangal people of the Eora Nation and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. This land is, was and always will be Aboriginal land. My name's Kobi Shetty. I'm the Greens candidate who's standing for the seat of Balmain. I am also an elected councillor on the Inner West Council for the Balmain ward, and I live in Lilyfield just down the road with my husband and 3 kids. They all go to the local public school, and it's been really fantastic already having an opportunity to represent this wonderful community and to be raising my family here. Before we start, I just want to take a moment to thank the organisers of tonight, because I know that it's not easy putting together forums like this, and it's really important for us as elected representatives and people seeking your support at the state election to be able to listen to the community and to be able to hear your concerns and the things that you care about. So can we just take a moment to thank the organisers for putting this on? Thank you to all of you too for joining us. I know that local politics is sometimes not the most exciting of events, so I really appreciate you all being here and just taking the time out of your evening to listen to us, and it's nice to know that this many people are so engaged in what's happening with the state election coming up. I know from speaking to people in the community that a lot of people are so appreciative of Jamie Parker's work over the last 12 years, and Jamie's in the back at the moment. I just wanted to say thank you for being here with us. Thank you for your advocacy over the last 12 years. I think you've been a wonderful advocate for our community. It's a real honour to be given the opportunity to represent the people of Balmain and to be given Jamie's endorsement to continue that really important work. I know from speaking to people that Jamie has proven that when a committed local member can work with the community together, a great deal can be achieved. We've seen Callan Park protected from privatisation. We've seen some of the most destructive elements of WestConnex avoided, like the Darley Road dive site and the digging of the harbour for the Western Harbour Tunnel being dredged. And we've also seen some really wonderful investment in some really important things like $60 million for shorter ship power at the White Bay Cruise Terminal. Now, all of these campaigns have been hard fought and won by the community, and many of you here have been a really integral part of those campaigns. So thank you to all of you. I think it just really demonstrates how critically important it is that we have a local member of parliament who can work with and advocate for the community without being beholden to special interests or political factions. I look at my kids and I look at other young people, and I'm really worried about what their future will look like. I was standing out with the young climate strikers in the torrential rain last week, and it was really inspiring to see their commitment to the future, trying to shape the planet in a positive way. And it's one of the reasons that I'm so proud to be standing for the Greens, to be able to be part of that team that has already and will continue to push the next government further and faster on climate action. We see so much corrupt decision making in New South Wales. Scott Ludlam once said, nobody quite does corruption like New South Wales does. And unfortunately, it's true, not just for the last Liberal National Government, but we have seen a long history of corruption in New South Wales politics. We see decisions that put polluting motorways and funneling money into the private companies' pockets put ahead of active in public transport. We see decisions being made that prevent my children and other kids from being able to walk to school safely. We see public land that's sold off forever, and we see development that doesn't provide what we need to make communities thrive. That really needs to change. As the next Greens member for Balmain, if I was elected, it would be a focus of mine to work for investment in the public sector. We all know that a cornerstone of a fair and caring society is ensuring that we have well-funded education and a public health system, which is why we, the Greens, are committed to a 15% pay rise for teachers and nurses, and we really want to see solid investment in the public sector. It's so critical. By keeping the seat of Balmain Green, we can continue to have a strong advocate for our community on issues that matter to you. When 62% of our residents vote to demerge the local council, we need a representative who values democracy and listens to your voices. I'll stand up in Parliament and call for the public health to be put above profits. I will stand with public housing residents and call for the sell-off of public housing to stop. And I'll continue the important work for the Greens to protect renters from huge rent hikes and unfair evictions. When we see $2.1 billion lost to poker machines in 92 days in New South Wales, we need a local member who will stand up to the gambling lobby and work to get pokies out of pubs and clubs. In my work as a fraud prevention specialist, I saw firsthand the damage that is done to vulnerable people when they are targeted financially, and I'm really proud to be standing with the Greens and taking such a strong stance on poker machine reform in New South Wales. I'm so honoured to have the opportunity to stand and to make sure that the needs of the people of New South Wales are put first, put front and centre, not policy led by property developers, not by the gambling lobby and not by the fossil fuel industry. This election we can change the government, and we can also keep a strong Greens voice at the centre of New South Wales Parliament who can push for real change. Thank you.
I'd just like now Philippa Scott to come up. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. It is actually strangely hard to hear yourself up here. This town hall has the worst acoustics of any venue in the inner west, and I've also got a really loud voice, so if this comes off a bit echoey, I'm terribly sorry. But hello, Leichhardt. It's so lovely to be here. I will also start by acknowledging that we are meeting tonight on the land of the Gadigal and Wongal people, and I pay my respect to their elders past and present. And I'll also take this opportunity to remind everyone that we're going to have the chance later this year to accept the generous gift of the Uluru Statement from the Heart and its simple requests for voice, treaty and truth, starting with a voice to Parliament. And I would encourage everyone to fully understand what that means on our journey towards reconciliation. If you haven't done the Inner West Council's Uluru Statement citizen training yet, this is a wonderful opportunity to understand what this change will mean and how you can talk about it in your community as well. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank Kobi for being here this evening, and also to Merilyn, our moderator, and to the organisers as well. You know, it does not happen by chance that a big public forum like this is arranged, and I'd like to thank you all for being here this evening. It is a genuine honour. A lot of people in this room already know me, but my name is Philippa Scott. I'm the Labor candidate for Balmain. I'm also the Deputy Mayor of the Inner West Council. I am a lifelong local, born in Camperdown, raised in Leichhardt, and that's also where I'm raising my family today. I'm a former refugee lawyer, and I've only ever worked in social justice causes for my entire career. I feel really privileged to have learnt very early on that I couldn't just make money for people who already had plenty of money. And so when my law school classmates were doing their internships at Mallesons, I was working at Legal Aid. My first job as a graduate lawyer was in the Guardianship Tribunal, which is that little courthouse that used to be in Balmain, working with people who had disabilities and genuine crises in their lives. Since then, I've worked at the Intellectual Disability Rights Service in Redfern, and also as a refugee advocate and a refugee lawyer with Salvo's Legals humanitarian program in Surrey Hills. I've represented clients in immigration detention, both onshore and offshore. And although I'm not in human rights practice anymore, I have carried that genuine commitment to social justice through all of my subsequent advocacy. For 6 years, I've been a board director of Metro Assist, which is one of the Inner West's largest social services charitable organisations for newly arrived migrants and refugees. And it's a wonderful organisation that I'm incredibly proud to lead. They provide tenancy advice, they provide education, skills, English language classes, and a wonderful advocacy service for integrating newly arrived migrants and refugees in our community. And I've taken that social justice work through my term as the Deputy Mayor of the Inner West Council. So I campaigned on and then led the program to provide free period products in council-run services. I believe that, you know, our human rights to have safe, hygienic facilities should extend to every person in this community, and that's why I led that program. I've also organised for free childcare to be arranged through Inner West Council's childcare centres for the children of migrants and refugees who are on visa determination status, because that means that they can't work. These are people who are reliant 100% on charity, and now we are providing them with free childcare and early education, which is a wonderful opportunity both for those children and for their parents to learn English, to integrate into society, and for parents to get a break from their kids. My commitment to education has been one of the core values that I've taken through all of my advocacy. For several decades, I've been a public school activist in the Inner West. I've been the P&C president at Kegworth Ush for several years, and through that work, I have seen firsthand the incredibly damaging cuts that the Liberal National Government have done to our schools, their infrastructure, and our teachers. When I was the president at Kegworth, we raised and donated $100,000 to build our own school fence, which is an essential part of the school that should have been provided by the Department of Education. Now I'm at Sydney Secondary College and we're still providing essential services through the P&C: science labs, library furniture, Indigenous education. All my life I've been working to correct injustices in society, and as the member for Balmain, I'll continue to do that every single day and fight for you every day. Thank you.
So now what I'm going to do is run through the questions from the sponsoring groups, and I'm going to alternate to whom I direct the question to first, so that the candidates can each have a turn at answering first from every second question. So the first question is from the Bays Community Coalition, and it concerns a filtration upgrade to WestConnect's fume exhaust stacks. Recent studies show that air pollution is linked to higher than average incidence of childhood asthma and to early onset dementia. Unfiltered stacks on the former Rozelle Goodyard site will cause massive air pollution, so filters are needed to protect community health. Do you, both of you, do you commit to having the state government fully filter the Rozelle WestConnect's fume stacks, and how will you achieve this? Kobi?
We're 100% committed, myself and the Greens, to filtering the stacks. We know that the health implications of not filtering the stacks, that the cost will be far more significant in public health than it will be to just spend that money now and protect our citizens. It's absolutely outrageous that we haven't been able to get a commitment from Liberals or the Labor Party to date on filtering those stacks. So I will continue to work to push from within Parliament if I'm elected, and to continue to work with the community until we get a commitment on filtration. Now, some of these campaigns, they take a decade. We know that the campaign for shorter ship power was the same. It's taken a decade, and we will keep pushing until we get a commitment that's going to put public health before the cost of filtration. We know they can be retrofitted and it needs to be done.
I absolutely share the community's concerns and Kobi's concerns. We are absolutely aligned when it comes to this. I too have children in the area, and obviously I want them to grow up in the safest possible environment. I have been able to secure from the Roads Minister a commitment that New South Wales Labor in government will conduct a review of the air quality and emissions from those stacks, and that review would be led by the Technical Advisory Committee on Air Quality and chaired by the New South Wales Chief Scientist. Those are people who know about this. This is an independent review, and I'm absolutely committed to pushing for that every day. I think it is wonderful that before we have even begun a term of government, that we are getting commitments from Labor in the Inner West, that we are getting commitments from a future government that prioritises health over motorways. The most important thing that we can do in this election is to change the government. That is absolutely the priority of this community, is to get out from under the thumb of Dominic Perrottet and the Liberal Nationals. And there is only one way to do that, and that is for Labor to win more seats than the Liberals, which means we need to win seats like Balmain, and that means voting one for Labor in Balmain.
This is a question from Roselle against WestConnex, otherwise known as RAW. Exhaust stack filtration is a serious issue for the Inner West community, especially for those who live within 2 kilometres of White Bay, because it's proven that vehicle diesel exhaust fumes are carcinogenic. What is New South Wales Labor's official policy position on exhaust stack filtration? If your position is different to the official position, how will Balmain Labor ensure that filters are added to all of the exhaust stacks?
Thank you again so much. At the risk of sort of repeating what I had said before, yes, I am absolutely committed to filtration and to reducing pollution and emissions in our community. My position is Labor's position. Labor has committed to a review of the air quality and emissions from the Roselle stacks. I might just finish the answer if that's all right. New South Wales Labor's position is that we have committed to a review, an independent review that will be chaired by the New South Wales Chief Scientist. That is Labor's position, that is my position. I am able to represent Labor because I am a voice for the community, because I have already been able to have discussions with future ministers and secured commitments for our community. This is something that we have not seen under the Liberal Nationals, who have for 12 years ridden absolutely roughshod over this community. We are about to be shortchanged in a major way over Roselle Parklands, which continues to under-deliver what was promised to this community. And the only way we'll be able to get out of this and for our community to receive the public benefits that we were promised as the result of having dealt with construction from WestConnex for 3 years is if we change the government.
I just want to say quickly that I'm happy to hear that Labor has shifted somewhat in their position on filtering the stacks. It is disappointing that we're being told that there will be another review. I feel like reviews are a very good way of committing to something without committing to it. We've seen a commitment for a review of our public transport bus contracts. We've seen a commitment for a review now of filtering the stacks. I'm very hopeful that this review will result in what needs to be done and a commitment to actually filter the stacks. But I think it's really critical that people are putting public health first, and we shouldn't need another review. We understand the implications of road pollution on our public health. Just want to touch on the Roselle Parklands as well. There's been a lot of sort of misinformation flying around about the Roselle Parklands. I think it's really wonderful and important that we've got a $50 million commitment from this government. I know that we need to keep a very close eye on what they deliver, but what has been left out of that project is simply things that won't fit in the parklands. We have a choice. We have looked at the list. There was a list put together by a panel that then they couldn't fit everything into that parklands, and so we really need to make sure that there is a commitment to get the parking sorted, because we know that the community has been through a great deal in that area, and it's critically important that that next step is done and that we keep a really mindful eye on what's delivered. But we shouldn't deny the fact that there's a $50 million parklands, but who's going to want to hang out there if we've got pollution pouring out over the top of us?
The third question is from Inner West Council Watch. After 5 years, will you now support and fund the installation for Leichhardt North Light Rail Station of a flat, easy accessible entranceway through the current Dan Murphy's car park site?
Of course, we absolutely support making our public transport stations more accessible, and I'm really glad to say that the Greens have a really strong policy on making sure that all of our public transport stations are accessible. Some people might not realise there was actually a commitment almost 20 years ago by the New South Wales government to make sure that all transport stations were accessible by last year, and we still have 30% of our transit stations that are not accessible. So I'm really committed to making sure that our public transport stations are accessible. We know that if we want people to use them, that we need them to be able to be used comfortably by wheelchair users, by people with prams, by people with reduced mobility. And there's a big difference between what's technically accessible and what's actually accessible and user-friendly. And that's why it's so critically important that we have consultation with the community when we're doing any sort of upgrades or any sort of new infrastructure buildings, to make sure that we're listening to people's views, because it's something that maybe an engineer sitting at a computer doesn't realise, that this accessible stop is actually really inconveniently designed, and the people that would use it are much more aware of it. It's really disappointing for me that in 2023 we're still talking and reminding planners and pushing for disability access. It should be something that is embedded in all of our planning. We saw the recent upgrade of the Dawn Fraser Baths, which was fantastic, co-funded by the state government and by the Inner West Council, and almost immediately after that project was finished, we discovered that there was no disability access to the pool, and now the council's going back to the drawing board to make that accessible, and that's something that should have been considered as part of that project. So I'm incredibly frustrated that we're still having these conversations in 2023 about making places accessible for everyone. It's a no-brainer and we should be doing it.
Thanks so much. Yes, of course, I'm very happy to continue to advocate for more access to public transport. Accessible and expanded public transport networks are something that the Labor Party is taking an incredibly strong position on going into this election. We have made a commitment that we will take the Transport Access Fund, combine it with the Commuter Car Park Fund, and add another $300 million specifically for access, to create almost $1 billion to expand and make more accessible public transport throughout Sydney and throughout New South Wales. Now, Kobi's exactly right that after 12 years of the Liberal National Government, commitments that they made to upgrade stations here in the Inner West still have not been achieved. You can ask the people at Lewisham or Dulwich Hill. You know, groups in this room have been incredibly active, and I thank you and support you for the work that you have done to continue to push this Liberal government to take action that should have been delivered in our community many years ago. And not only that, they have bragged about, Matt Keane has bragged about the skullduggery that he was able to achieve, that's a quote, in order to get a station upgrade in his electorate up the list, which was, you know, taking over from places that an independent review had identified should be prioritised. This is the genuine problem with this government in New South Wales. They need to change. Our number one priority as a community has to be to vote out the Liberal National Government, or they are going to do this again to us for another 12 years. And I just want to touch on one other thing which was part of this question, which is the Transport Asset Holding Entity. Now, that entity is an absolute accounting scam. That is the New South Wales Liberal Nationals taking transport assets, putting them in a separate organisation, which is why it is hard for the community to negotiate. There should not be multiple stakeholders in getting access to a train station. It should be a government property with community input that organises that access. It should not be, oh no, sorry, you have to consult with Tahi, this thing that we just invented to put all of our assets off the books. This is the level of skullduggery, to quote Matt Keane, that we are dealing with under the Liberal National Government. The only thing that we need to do as a community is to vote these people out. And the only way we will do that is if we win seats like Balmain. That is why we do need to vote one for Labor in Balmain in order to achieve a change of government that we desperately need.
Question number 4 is from Friends of Callan Park. Last year, the state government once again tried to gut important protections against privatisation and commercialisation at Callan Park, but failed. Will you undertake to oppose and vote against any attempts to weaken those protections in the future? Philippa first.
Thank you so much. Yes, of course, I will always protect Callan Park. As a lifelong local, I've seen Callan Park over decades. I've seen it change from hospital grounds through to open space, and I'm incredibly proud of the fact that it was Labor's legislation, the last Labor member for Port Jackson, Sandra Norrie, who implemented the Callan Park Act in 2003 that saved Callan Park. I am incredibly proud of... Thank you. Thank you, that's one for Sandra Norrie. I am incredibly proud of Labor's record when it comes to Callan Park. But the truth is that under the Liberal National Government over the 12 years, we have seen a vast underinvestment in Callan Park. The park is now in a Parklands Trust, as most people in this room would know, with Parramatta Park and Centennial Park. And just yesterday, we saw Dominic Perrottet announce a $55 million investment in Parramatta Park to preserve its green open space and to preserve its heritage buildings and to give it the kind of uplift that we absolutely need here in Callan Park. Now, this is only the kind of thing that you can do once you're in government, and we absolutely need to change the government in order to move away from the Liberal Nationals and their treatment of Callan Park.
We know how hard fought those protections were, how they have been won over the last 20 years. And having spent so much time with my children since COVID struck, wandering around Callan Park, it's an absolute gem, and I am so incredibly grateful for all of the work of the community, of the Friends of Callan Park, of the former Leichhardt Council, and of Jamie Parker over the last 20 years to protect those parklands. And I think we need to be clear, the reason that that Special Provisions Act was put through for Callan Park was because the last Labor government was trying to sell off that land. And that campaign was hard fought by the community, by the Leichhardt Council, and we need to be really clear about how that came about. So I'm obviously very committed to making sure that that parkland is not only protected for future generations, but that we see a decent amount of investment in it. And, you know, let's not undermine the work that Jamie Parker has done in Parliament over the last 5 to 10 years. We've seen $20 million invested in Callan Park. We've seen buildings restored, the waterfront restored. We've seen partnerships with clubs like Balmain and District Football Club to get those buildings used again. That's not something that's happened by accident, and it's something that's been able to be achieved with a Greens Member of Parliament in this seat.
Right, question number 5 is from Leichhardt Locals. The Parramatta Road Corridor Urban Transformation Strategy has failed to lead to the rejuvenation of Parramatta Road, and instead is being used as a cover for rezoning for high-rise development of areas away from Parramatta Road, as is currently the case in West Leichhardt, in Hatham, Beeson, Kegworth and Tebbit Streets. Will you support the suspension and review of this so-called Parramatta Road strategy? Kobi.
Myself and the Greens are absolutely committed to making sure that any development that is done in this electorate is appropriate and in keeping with the local environment. I can understand why people are very upset when they've got wind of these plans with the gateway determination that's just come through. It's really clear that people aren't comfortable with these plans, and I have sought assurances from the Director of Planning at the Inner West Council that there will be very, very thorough consultation before anything else is progressed on this strategy. If the consultation comes back as I expect it to, which is most likely to be overwhelmingly against this kind of uplift in this residential area, I can give you a commitment right here and right now that I will not be supporting it. From a state level, we need to be handing these planning decisions back to councils, and they've been so undermined by this government. That's part of the problem. We've had this government imposing developments like this on the local communities, and we need to change the legislation in New South Wales Parliament and put councils and the community back in charge of local planning.
Thank you. Yes, Kobi's exactly right that the Liberal Nationals have imposed development and their plans and planning on our community against community wishes. That's why it's so important to change the government. But I'm going to just attack this question in 2 parts, if that's all right, with the crowd's indulgence. So firstly, and you'll see why in a second, the Parramatta Road strategy, the Liberals' plan for Parramatta Road has obviously failed. As someone who's lived here for my whole life, I've seen Parramatta Road change over the decades, and it's never looked worse than it has right now. It is grim, it's depressing, it's unsafe, it's polluted, there's vacant stores everywhere, it's awful. Whatever the Liberals' vision was to turn Parramatta Road into the Champs-Élysées, it has not materialised. So yes, we absolutely need to go back to the drawing board on the Parramatta Road strategy. But with regard to the Leichhardt West rezoning, I do have to be a little bit careful about that. I have an already on the record declaration of interest in that rezoning because my house is in the rezoning zone. So I have to be very careful about any comments that I make in the public domain that might indicate which way I would vote or decide, because there is a potential for a perceived conflict there. But I will say, of course, I don't have to have no opinion about this. Of course, we do need to have homes for people in the inner west, and we need to build good communities around good transport and shopping access. We can't have high-rises sitting alone on their own. We need to have beautiful communities, and we already have the model for that type of density right here in the inner west. It's the terrace house. We already know exactly what good, walkable, supported density looks like, and that's the terrace houses that were the vision of Gough Whitlam and Tom Uran in Glebe many years ago, and there is no reason why we have to go and reinvent the wheel when we know exactly what works.
Thank you. So the last question in this section is from residents for de-amalgamation. Part one of the question's in two parts. Part one is addressed to Inner West councillors. So this is a question to them as councillors. Part two will be addressed to all candidates, of whom we have two present here tonight. So part one, we'll answer part one or address part one first. Can you explain how a business case that argues for the Inner West to stay merged, despite 62.5% of residents wanting to go back to the original council boundaries, was sent to the Minister at the end of last year? Philippa?
Thank you so much. I am really proud of the way that the Inner West Council has handled what could have been a very disruptive demerger process. We campaigned on and have acted on respecting the community's wishes through the December 21 poll. And in fact, at the very first meeting of the new term of council, immediately after adopting the Uluru Statement from the Heart, the first act of the Inner West Council was to begin the process of preparing the demerger case. And the council has pushed that business case and advanced it at every possible opportunity, including through very extensive community consultation. In fact, every single community submission that was provided through the community consultation was included in the business case that's been submitted to the Minister. What I will not do, and what you cannot expect Labor to do, is to go back and rewrite a business case so as to achieve a particular predetermined outcome. Cooking the books on a business case is a hallmark of the Liberal National Government, and they have done it time after time. What you cannot expect Labor to do ever is to agree to go back and rewrite an independent business case so as to achieve a particular outcome. That is a hallmark of this Liberal National Government, who have done that on issues as varied as how we arrived at these merged councils in the first place, to rorting bushfire grants out of their due compensation under the guidance of John Barilaro. Rorting business cases, cooking the books, and going back to independent reviews so as to achieve a political outcome is something that is a Liberal national way of acting. It is not something that you can ever ask or expect that a Labor candidate, MP or government will ever do. But we do need to change this government in New South Wales to ensure that this kind of rorting stops now.
Thank you.
I think we might be missing the point here, and the point is that 62.5% of our community voted to demerge. When the local government elections were on, we had commitments from a vast majority of the councillors who are now sitting on the Inner West Council that they would honour the wishes of the community and put a strong business case to the Minister for Local Government to demerge our council as the community expected us to. And what we have seen put forward is a business case that involved push polling to call residents to extol the exorbitant costs of demerging and to try and talk them out of their views that the council should be demerged. And it really was an effort to try and weaken the case for a demerger. Now, we know that it's going to be expensive. We know that merging was a lot more expensive than anybody ever told us. But what wasn't represented, I think, in this business case was what we actually lost as part of merging the Inner West Council, the local representation, the grassroots democracy, the ability for our local community to really guide the decisions of the council. And it's something that we have seen time and time again over this term of council, where the voices of the community are being ignored. And the independent councillors and the Green councillors on this council have been incredibly frustrated with this process. We believe that we should be listening to the residents and following through with their wishes, because that's what we're there to do.
Okay, part 2 is addressed to the candidates in the forthcoming election. The Demerger New South Wales Alliance is calling on all candidates to commit to amend the Local Government Act to hold a demerger plebiscite in all the forcibly merged councils where a petition to do so is received by the Minister from 10% of the residents of the former council area, and to hold plebiscites in early 2024 in preparation for the September 2024 council elections. Kobi, will you support this?
Yes, I absolutely support it. The Greens are committed to grassroots democracy. It's one of the pillars, one of the 4 pillars that underpins our party. And I think part of that grassroots decision making is respecting the views of the community and following through. I think the point here is that we don't need to do another poll. We know what our community wants, and we need to respect that, and we need to listen, and we need to work towards the demerger that they feel like they were promised by given the opportunity to vote at the last local government elections. It's incredibly dispiriting for a community to be given the chance to have a say on matters like this, and to then find themselves after a 2.5% of the community voting for something, for that to be, you know, undermined and overlooked. So yes, I absolutely support it.
Thank you.
We good? Okay. It has been a little while since I've practiced law, and I was a human rights lawyer, not a local government expert, but my understanding of this Act is that there already is a provision in section 2218 to allow for this type of plebiscite to occur. And should the communities be so motivated as to put forward a petition in order to do that, I would welcome them to do so, just as the people of the Inner West have done.
Now I'd like to invite questions from the floor, but I do ask everyone to be civil, to be to the point, and not to make long-winded statements, just to put it bluntly. So ask a good question and you'll get a good answer.
Okay. My name is Emma. Like everyone in the room, I'm also a local. This is for all the candidates. What have you done professionally, and what qualifications do you have that would make you the best candidate for us to choose?
I have practiced as a social justice lawyer for a number of years. I no longer do that work. You know, I did say before, I've represented refugees, both in offshore and onshore immigration detention, and fought against the worst excesses of human rights violations under Liberal governments in Australia. We are starting to turn a corner there, and that's thanks to amazing advocacy by people like our new Immigration Minister, Andrew Giles. I had a meeting with the Asylum Seeker Resource Centre the other day, and they told me they are so pleased with how much work and how much fast tracking there has been of refugees who, when I was in practice, were absolutely stuck in awful situations under Howard era laws that are now moving through the system and being allowed to reside in Australia. And I think that's a wonderful achievement. It's incredibly difficult work to do, so I don't do that anymore. You know, I really admire anyone who's able to have a very long career in not-for-profit and social justice law, because it's a grind, it's very low paid, long hours, don't see your family, hard work. Where I work now, the job that I'm on leave from in order to contest this election, is at UTS, which reflects my ongoing passion for advancing education throughout Australia. I work on programs to expand and enhance the student experience, and particularly to encourage people from non-typical university backgrounds, whether they're non-English speaking or first in family or low SES or from Western Sydney, to look at themselves as future students, to look at themselves as someone who can achieve an education through our fantastic education system. And I'm really proud of the work that I've done there to expand UTS's programs of outreach. It's been a wonderful role, and I'll certainly miss that if I'm elected, but I know that there is so much more good that you can do as an MP, you know, continuing to take all of my sort of social justice credentials into this next election. I know that what people want in Balmain is someone who shares their progressive values to vote for. I know that what people want is for somebody who can stand before them and say, I share your values. I am someone who reflects what you care about: human rights, social justice, someone who has the experience and a record of delivery, who can stand there and represent you under a changed government.
I'll give you a bit of my background. I had a corporate career in fraud prevention, and it exposed me to the absolute devastation that was caused by financial attacks on vulnerable people. My team worked on internet banking fraud, and we saw a lot of relationship scams, and the parallels between the relationship scams that people were falling victim to and the harm that is caused by poker machines, I can tell you they're really, really similar. And that's why I'm so driven to try and reform our gambling laws and to try and reform poker machines. In New South Wales, it's absolutely appalling that they are so prolific, that we are seeing so much harm in our community. And that's why I'm such a strong advocate in terms of political corruption and trying to stamp that out, because I just think it's a scourge, and it's made decision-making for all the wrong reasons, and it's not supporting our community. I think this question might be like an attempt at a gotcha question, because I must admit that I have undertaken a Bachelor of Arts in Community Development and Sustainability whilst I was juggling my children and active within the Greens and working part-time. And I have 5 units to go, but that was, I think, you know, working with the community, studying sustainability sets me in very good stead, I think, to steer the direction of our future government, to make sure that they're focusing on what's important, and that's looking after our planet and putting our community first.
I found that interesting, the backgrounds you both got. I've worked in 5 community legal centres. I set one up for free, and I defended Aboriginal people all through Western New South Wales, and I worked mainly in criminal representation. And I met many people, some terrific people. But I've got to say that what matters is policy. It's not past, it's what you're going to do next, and it's your policy that matters. It doesn't matter a fig where I've been in the past. I ran a union of 12,000 members. It was the bus union, and we stopped Labor from sacking the bus conductors. So there are a lot of good people in Labor, but it doesn't mean that bad things aren't done by Labor. You need somebody to check them. So what I want to know, it's a very simple question, yes or no. I don't want a speech. I just want to know, 62.5% voted. Will you back the vote, the popular mandate, or will you take it as an opportunity to just look into it and see if you can talk the people out of it and ask for a second vote? Will you ask for a second vote?
Undertaking these polls are incredibly expensive, and I think it's completely unnecessary. We need to just support our residents in what they voted for and get on with the job.
Yes, I don't think that we need a second vote about demerger. I just want to, with the moderator's indulgence, just go back one tiny little bit to say, that was not a gotcha question, and I didn't know you hadn't finished your degree. And I'm like the queen of the Never Too Late Club, so I really, really encourage you to finish your units, and I hope you do them at UTS.
Okay, I'm just going to ask a quick question that came in writing from a resident in advance. What is your position on requiring the state government to commit to providing and funding solar panels to all state government schools where building structures make it feasible?
Absolutely, we should fund solar panels on schools. And in fact, in lots more places. We have this beautiful clean sunshine here in Australia that we are not making the best use of. And Labor has a wonderful and very bold policy going into this election to create a 100% publicly owned renewable energy corporation that will do exactly that, fund solar panels on schools and public buildings and private homes, and moreover, create community batteries where we can support residents to, charge and save on their power bills as well as reduce their emissions. This is absolutely the easiest yes in the world, and I would be really, welcome any opportunity to support schools to install more solar.
Just touching on that, obviously a Greens member in as a Labor government with a Greens member for Balmain will definitely not be standing in the way to stop that kind of commitment from the Labor Party, so that's very good to hear. I'm really proud that the Greens have actually got a really strong policy about making schools more sustainable, and that doesn't just look like solar panels on roofs. It's about making it easier for children to travel by bike or on foot to school. It's about embedding sustainability into the curriculum. It's about making sure that schools can work towards zero waste. And we know that I was with the Leichhardt Public School sustainability team from the PNC this morning having a conversation about this very thing. We know that there's so much appetite for these local schools to get involved and be more sustainable and lead the way for our communities. And all we need now is a government that's got vision, who can actually work to support those schools and also support the schools that don't have a really gung-ho inner west environmental lilt, so that those schools in the western suburbs that may not have someone championing this stuff can also become more sustainable. So I'm really proud of the Greens' position on making our schools more sustainable.
The gateway determination. So basically, in regards to if you're a landowner or a landlord in a residential area and you rent your property out, there's going to be, I believe there's going to be changes to the law where you can't really push your tenant out. But in regards to commercial properties, what we have currently in our area, where they've got tenants, there is a particular building that I'm thinking of that is pushing out their tenants so that they can then go to the gateway determination and say, we pushed out it, not that they pushed out their tenants, but they don't have any tenants, therefore I fit into this situation where I've got no tenants, I can now redevelop to what I want, not what's best for the community. So where do you guys stand in regards to commercial properties, etc., or commercial organisations that do that are not healthy for the community and that will actually be a detriment to our housing and our environment, our area, and also the actual businesses that were originally there, that because we're literally 3 times the population density. We've got lack of commercial properties in our area that are trying to push their own way, and so this is all related to the gateway determination. They run to the gateway determination and say, I'm now vacant, vote for me. Where do you guys stand?
I think you're asking about landlords of commercial properties kicking tenants out and not having those properties tenanted, is that right? So what the Greens policy is that we would like to push for state legislation to change to allow local councils to change the rates if there are vacant properties. At the moment, local councils aren't empowered to make those decisions to actually charge higher rates if there's vacant properties in the main streets. And what we're seeing is land banking. We're seeing commercial owners leaving those properties empty, waiting for things like gateway determinations, and not caring about the high streets that they're a part of. And so we would like to change the legislation to make sure that we're empowering our local councils to be able to lift rates for vacancies and to make sure that those properties can be tenanted and that there are going to be consequences to leaving these shop fronts to be derelict and take away from the local community.
Thank you, and thanks, Kobi, for clarifying the question. Yes, my position is also that we should empower councils to vary rates so as to ensure that there are reduced vacancies on high streets. And that is something that the Inner West Council has been advocating for since 2017. And we've recently re-upped our advocacy on that. It's something that I'll continue to push for as the member for Balmain as well. Labor's commitments to revitalising our high streets are absolutely solid going into this election. We will double the number of live music venues. We will we'll ensure that outdoor dining can remain permanent. We absolutely know that vacancies on high streets and a lack of nightlife in this area is something that we have suffered through as a result of having 12 years of the Liberals and Nationals in charge. And I know that our Minister for the Arts, Culture, Music and the Nighttime Economy, John Graham, would agree with me that we absolutely need revitalisation. He and I are aligned on doing that together if Labor is elected in March and if we're able to change this government.
What's your policy on the redevelopment of White Bay? Balmain's infrastructure has already been very sorely tested. The schools are full, the roads are congested. How on earth can we afford to have so many more high-rise buildings? Can you just say what your policy would be?
Thank you. I think White Bay presents an incredible opportunity for our community. I think anybody who looks at that and doesn't think, well, this could be the Tate Modern of Sydney is kidding themselves. It absolutely could be. It's a wonderful space where public amenities should absolutely come first. And I know that Labor is committed to making sure that whatever happens with White Bay, that the community's interests and public benefit are at the very forefront of that decision-making process. And that means active transport, cycling links, reopening the old Glebe Island Bridge, and ensuring that the foreshore is accessible by lots of different people before we start to look at mixed-use development.
I just want to say it's been fantastic that we've been able to retain the use of the White Bay Power Station for the community. I know that there was a time there where the Liberal government were looking at knocking it down, and Jamie and the community worked very hard to make sure that that was retained, and we're going to be continuing to advocate to make sure that that's retained for cultural and community use and doesn't become some sort of retail shopping mecca or some other, more residential, which we absolutely don't need in that building. I think it's really important that we think about the density and the impact that that's going to have on local traffic. It's a very wonderful opportunity to regenerate the area, but we need to be focused on the provision of open space, the provision of infrastructure to support the people that are going to be living there. The density, the height of those buildings, the 22 stories is the highest building that's been slated for that development, and I am going to be clear, it's too high. It's going to dwarf the White Bay Power Station. It's going to bring too many people to the area. One of the biggest problems is that we're not getting enough public housing. This is public land that is going to be sold off forever. And at the moment, there's no provision for public housing in that development. And at the, I'll be quick. At a recent council meeting last year where the council was putting forward a submission on that development, I moved from some very serious and important amendments about the traffic implications, about the density of building, and about a provision of 30% social or affordable housing in that building that were all voted down by the Labor councillors. So it's been incredibly disappointing not to have support to advocate for that.
Please keep your questions to the point. We're really very close to the time when we have to wrap.
Okay, so the point is I'm looking at housing affordability, 3 classifications: public, social and affordable housing, which is under a particular piece of the Act. My question is, there's been various statements from the 2 major parties and the Greens about, yes, we're going to build more public housing. However, the problem is that does not necessarily mean there will be a net increase in public housing, because what they're doing is knocking down public housing, evicting people, building tower blocks and keeping a small percentage. So my clear question is, will they, 1, make sure that the Land and Housing Corporation is no longer a profit-making business and will act in the public interest? And 2, will they make a net increase in the public housing and social housing provision rather than saying we're just going to build more when actually we're selling them off? Thank you.
Okay, people do.
Thank you. Yes, Labor's going into this election with an incredibly strong platform around public housing. We are drawing a line in the sand when it comes to the sell-off of public housing. And the commitment that I have from the Shadow Housing Minister is that any housing that remains unsold will stay unsold as of now. That means we keep the Franklin Estate, we keep the Glebe Estate, we keep Lagan Avenue in Balmain, we keep all the housing we have in our community, and we reinvest in home improvement so that people can stay in the communities that they love. Beyond that, we do need to build more public housing. Not only the 30% that Labor has committed to for social and affordable housing on any excess public land, but we need to actively go forward, not just in a percentage of houses that are social, affordable and public, but in the net amount. We need to actually make more houses for people by building great communities in the inner west.
We know what the Liberal National Government has done in Glebe has been smoke and mirrors, and as you say, they have demolished existing public housing, they've done a 70-30 split, and they've left residents with actually less bedrooms than what they started with. So what seems to be more dwellings is actually less housing for people, and it's been absolutely appalling. The Greens have an incredibly strong position on public housing, and part of that too is not only protecting, maintaining and stopping the sell-off of the public housing we have, but we have to look at this selling off of public land and stop it. We need to stop permanently selling off public land and not using that public land to provide social, public and affordable housing for the people that need it. The housing crisis at the moment on all levels is absolutely out of control, and we need an incredibly large amount of investment to get that back on track.
Gentleman down the back.
You guys have got the biggest TAFE in New South Wales in your seat at Ultimo TAFE. It's been decimated over the last 12 years by the National Liberal Government. Can you give us an outline of how you're going to help students in vocational education at TAFE?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Do we support TAFE? 100%. The Greens support free education, and that's from early childhood all the way through to university. What the government has done at a federal level, the previous government, I should say, undermining our public education system has been nothing short of appalling, and we absolutely support the proper funding of TAFE so that we can level the playing field for the community. When we have incredibly expensive tertiary education, we know that it just embeds social inequality, and that needs to change.
Thank you. Yes, I've already spoken passionately about my commitment to public education, and of course that includes TAFE. Labor's platform going into this election is incredibly strong around TAFE. We'll commit 70% of the skills and training budget to TAFE. It's been underfunded, undermined and under-resourced under this Liberal government for 12 years. We absolutely need to turn that around by changing the government.
Okay, this is like speed dating.
Hi, Jane McNeilage. I'm really interested, actually, listening to the two of you. You seem to be in complete harmony. What interests me is I got this leaflet today which indicated that if you don't vote Labor first, the Liberals will stay in. I don't think the Liberals are going to get in, and I think that there's no reason, I can't understand why Labor and the Greens can't work together. For God's sake, you guys have turned to each other backwards and forwards. So, Philippa, this is for you. Can you tell me the mathematics which convince me that if Labor doesn't get into Balmain specifically, that we will end up with a parachute government?
Thank you. There are any number of scenarios where Labor falls short a seat to form government, and independents on the crossbench like Alex Greenwich and Greg Piper have already said that what they will look at when they determine who they support to form a government will be which party has won the absolute most number of seats. The only way to guarantee that this government changes is for Labor to win more seats than the Liberals, and that can start right here in Balmain by voting one for Labor to ensure that your vote goes to changing this horrible government.
Let's put this notion to bed, shall we? If Labor are trying to win seats back off the Greens, then they're in trouble. You guys should be looking to form government with seats elsewhere. There is no chance that the Greens are going to support the formation of a Liberal government. So the only difference between a Labor candidate, a Labor politician here or a Greens, is that Labor may win a majority government or Labor may win a minority government supported by the Greens. And the best outcome for this community is going to be a Greens member with a Labor government so that we can push them further on the things that they are not doing well enough.
Okay, just time for one last question. Rochelle, do you have a question?
Hi, will you commit to fight against and to never support commercialisation in Cullen Park? Can we get that commitment from both of you now?
100%, absolutely.
Yes, I think we've already addressed that.
Okay, now I know I said last, but there's always time for one more person. This lady in the front here.
This question is for Philippa Scott. I remember at the last local council election, and we were also asked about demerger. Philippa was at the steps at the bottom of Leichhardt Town Hall, and I went up to her and I asked her, does she support demerger? She was non-committed and she was not enthusiastic.
What's your question?
Yeah. I want to ask Philippa, she seems to be at this meeting talking about supporting demerger, right? And I want to make sure you keep to your word because I want to trust you. Do you support the demerger?
Thank you. The Inner West Council has advanced the business case for demerger at every possible step, and it's now in the hands of the government.
Okay, now we come to the very last moment, apart from when I thank everyone for coming. 1 minute each speaker up here, not you, to sum up and have the last word. Kobi.
Thank you all for coming again. Look, I think Jamie Parker has proven that a Greens member here can be incredibly effective working with the community and advocating for the community. And I think that these arguments that we will only get good outcomes if we have a Labor member as part of a Labor government need to be debunked. As I said a moment ago, we will absolutely unequivocally not support the formation of a Liberal government, and I think that that is the most critical message that I want you to take away tonight. We will not be supporting a Liberal government, and the only way that we will have a good outcome is if we have a strong Greens, community-based, supportive member in Balmain who puts the community first, who doesn't take political donations, who doesn't get guided by factional infighting within the Labor Party, and we can make sure that we can have really strong representation but also change the government. So I am as passionate as all of you to throw this government out, and I want to make sure that we have really strong representation here in Balmain.
Thank you. I also thank you for your enthusiasm tonight. I share that enthusiasm, that passion, that drive. The Inner West has been home for all of my 42 years. I love this place, and all I want is for us to have a good government that represents us. With great respect, attempting to elect a Labor minority government has been a needle that people have been trying to thread for 12 years without success. The only way that you can guarantee that your vote will absolutely toss out this terrible Dominic Perrottet Liberal National Government is with a vote won for Labor in Balmain.
Okay. Right. Now it's time to say goodbye. Thank you, neighbours, near and far, for coming tonight. And thank you very much, Kobi and Philippa. It's been great that you've been so open and answering the questions. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much.